Hello, happy Father's Day. This is going to be a quick mini documentary as a happy Father's Day card to my dad. This is a picture of a pansy that, or technically a viola, I guess, that self-seated itself in the bottom of the steps at the house we lived in when I was a teenager. And this is one of my favorite pictures. But what I'm going to do is document a bit of the history of my early days gardening. And the reason this is a Father's Day thing is because my dad is the reason that I love gardening. He allowed me to tear up the yard eventually, but it started out smaller than that. In the early days, I think I was 12 when I asked him if I could tear up a bit of the yard right next to the sidewalk going out to the driveway in the backyard. So I think it was about 1.5 feet by 3 feet, just right along the sidewalk. And the first year, I'm pretty sure I mostly had flowers, but the neighbor lady, she grew herbs. Her name was Jenny. I've probably talked about this before, but anyway, so this is a documentary. I'm getting the whole thing. She gave me some oregano, and I actually have a picture of that oregano many years later. The flat flowering. So this is that oregano flowering. It's kind of a neat picture if the camera focuses on it. This might not work if the camera doesn't focus. Ugh. Anyway, so that's what this is. Now, from as long as I can remember, my dad talked about the day I was born. He brought Mom a bouquet of what he called naked ladies, or a lot of people call them surprise lilies. My dad grew up on farms and ranches. He has a degree in agriculture, even though he's spent his whole life preaching. That's where he got started. And so we always had flowers, and he was always doing things in the yard when I was a kid. So I guess it isn't a big surprise that I wanted to do a garden. Eventually my sister had rose bed as well. So we've both had our fun in the yard. But our backyard had a garage and a carport. And on two sides of the garage, making an L shape, was a dog pen. And when I was, I think, 15, we didn't have a dog anymore. And so we didn't need a dog pen. Or if we had a dog, it didn't use the dog pen. Anyway, so I asked if I could clean it out, because it was overrun with trumpet vine and a bunch of other weeds. So I asked if I could clean it out and transform it into a garden of my own. And my dad said, okay, sure. Because, I mean, it was already full of weeds, so if I didn't keep up with it, how bad could that be? So in front of this is the picture of the gate. If you can see, this is the door that goes back here is the actual entrance into the dog pen. So you had to bend down and almost crawl to get into it. And these are the leaves of the lilac. There's a huge lilac in front of the entrance to this garden. So here's a better picture of the entrance. So you would kneel down through there. And these pictures are going to cover many levels, like many, not levels, but generations of this garden, because I maintained it for a number of years. But there is a brick path. It's too dark to see, but there's a brick path there, and then I put shade stuff right here because this got a lot of shade. You can see the brick path better in this picture. I've only this year begun to be better about putting my hose away when I'm done with it. So that's something I've done most of my life, is just leave the hose out. But anyway, so I planted a wisteria here that never bloomed, but I had high hopes. And then this is, if you come around the corner, this is along the back side, and of course it was full sun. And there was this tree that has just a few leaves on it here. This is a rose bush over here. So this is right along the back of the garage. And here's what I had planted there. I had some Dutch iris. Man, I hope this focus is working. Dutch iris, purple and yellow. I find it kind of neat that there was purple and yellow Dutch iris. Purple was my favorite color. And then eventually I met a guy. We fell in love, and his favorite color was yellow. And now we're married. So, it's interesting. So this is columbine. And I have loved columbine ever since I planted this. So it's been over 20 years of loving this gorgeous flower. Isn't that cool? So, this is probably earlier in the season. There's no leaves on the tree. There's just a stick. You can't even really see it. But I uncovered this brick path. You couldn't see any of the brick paths when I first got started on this project. And then over here, I've planted a bunch of different random things. Eventually, this actually is used. I think I have a picture of that. So this is a lavender. I think it's a Spanish lavender. You can see that. My obsession with herbs began at a young age as well. Isn't that pretty? And then this is closer to the end on that sunny side. And I planted some pansies there. That's my absolute favorite flower. And this is if you are at the end of the back of the garden and you look towards the corner. So this was the wisteria here. And this is before I uncovered the brick path. So I haven't got these in chronological order, I guess. But there's the rose on the trellis. And there's the wisteria. It had gone all the way up that way. And then if you look back up, I got a hammock at some point. So these are all shade-loving. There's a lot of ground cover in here. Those are grape hyacinths. It's a closer picture of them. I had some of those double impatiens. They looked like little mini rose bushes. I just loved them. And that's one of the ground cover vines. There's the grape hyacinths blooming. Those actually have a wonderful smell. I don't know. You have to get really close to them to smell them. So then this was my first hammock. And I spent a lot of time in it. This is the view from the hammock as you're laying in it. I had grapevine there and I just sort of let it do its thing. Because it wasn't trumpet vine. So I let it be. And there was a mimosa tree nearby. And then you see my toes down there. Right down there. Looking right at the gate. So, that was my first big garden project on my own. And then, in the backyard, so we had a big backyard that was sort of a square shape, surrounded by a driveway and turnaround spot that was made of cement, and then the fence on one side. So this Bridal Veil spirea was sort of in the middle of that square area where the fence was. And I loved the spirea. Loved it. This is the spirea when it's not blooming. Okay? So I got the idea to plant some lavender like this. Okay? And this was the beginning of really tearing up the backyard. I'm sorry the pictures are moving so much. Okay, so there's a lot more pictures of that than I thought. Eventually, I bricked in a flower bed. There's a little Eeyore watching the flower bed. But before it was bricked in, I just dug the grass up. So the house is right here. And then this is coming off. There's like a foot or two between the edge of this flower bed and the area where the fence was. Okay? So I think this is a coreopsis. There's some dianthus or chrysanthemums, whatever you want to call them. The neighbor lady who gave me the oregano gave me a seed packet from Monet's garden when they went to France. And I just scattered those there. And so some of the flowers in these pictures were from that seed packet. Some phlox, butterfly bush. This I think is a larkspur. Another larkspur. And then that's that same picture. Okay, so that was the flower bed. By the time I was 19, I had convinced Dad to let me dig up most of the backyard. So in this picture you can see it better. this is was all grass. And I dug the grass up and I put in vegetable and herb beds. So there's a big square one here that's in quadrants, and then there's kind of a half circle one back here. This is facing the house, and I had lined the whole thing with pansies. This over here is that original first patch that he gave me, I think when I was 12. So in 5 years, I had taken over quite a bit in the back. The front yard was all his. So this is the sprinkler going in it. And I have, as you can see, a lot of herbs. I've read a lot about companion planting and tried to implement as much of that as I could in that first garden patch. There's a little piglet next to the dill and the basil. There's some beets, some zucchini and tomatoes. I think this is a tarragon. Carrots. Some thyme. I had several different kinds of thyme. There's all the dill in a row. And that's probably cucumber. I grew a crazy cucumber. I should have got that picture out. It was long like a snake. So those are the tomatoes. Okay? And see in the back, there's those spireas. Here's the flower bed. And then another tiny flower bed. So the next set of pictures are just close-ups of the flowers and herbs that I was growing. So this is flax. I think I took a lot of pictures of the flax. Then I had some yellow gladiolus in the flower bed. There's some rosemary that bloomed. It's the only time that's ever happened for me. I tried dahlias. I'd forgotten that I had grown dahlias. I thought I was terrible at it, but apparently I had some dahlias at one point. Here's close-ups of the flax. There's a pansy. Some more pansies. My love of pansies has been a long-endured thing. Well, I don't have to endure it. I enjoy it. I tried some calla lilies. They did not do great, although at the beginning they looked good because my sister really liked them. This is St. John's wort and more of that flax. So, as you can see, it all began with one father saying yes and then encouraging me and allowing me to see my visions through. And I think he encouraged me along the way to keep up with the weeding and stuff as well, but it really was encouragement. I don't remember him ever making me feel bad about any of the decisions that I made. And he was very encouraging, and honestly I don't think I would have wanted to do it if I hadn't heard his stories about gardens in his life and seen him enjoying our backyard so much. So Papa, thank you very much. If you look at the other videos on my YouTube channel, you'll see that I, today, 20 years after all of this, am still a passionate gardener. And that all came from you. So thank you very much. I love you. Happy Father's Day.